one of the things that this crisis has shown us is the importance of communities and community-based decisions. We traditionally have looked to the federal government to provide most solutions top-down. But when a crisis unfolds that affects different parts of the community differently, and it unfolds rapidly with a lot of uncertainty, I think it's really exposed our need to have better relationships and understandings of capabilities in industry, in academia, at the state and local level, in philanthropy. We had people who wanted to help, people who had the ability to help, and people who had money that they wanted to apply to these problems. But we had challenges recognizing where those resources were and how to bring them to bear on a very uncertain space. So I think that we learn a lot that can be positive for this in thinking about leadership in less of a controlling manner, in a less autocratic perspective. And we can think about the strengths of America really being our ability to bring diverse and competitive solutions rapidly to a problem, and think about how we begin to knit together these communities in a more collaborative style of leadership.
Well, the first thing you could do is to elect some tech-savvy leaders into positions of authority. And second, we could use evidence-based policymaking as opposed to opinion-based policymaking.
I think it allows each of us to try to seek solutions and to understand truth. I had my nieces recently. My niece is 12, and she was explaining the Spanish flu to me and how long it took for us to get past that as a nation. And I thought, wow, my 12-year-old niece, in trying to understand the uncertain situation that she finds herself in now, has actually done her own research into the history that might give her some frame for this. I think the challenge is that when you have a 12-year-old doing their own research and creating a frame, it can be very difficult to know when that's a positive frame, when that is a legitimate, truthful, evidence-based frame, and when that is not. And I think this is where, and I hear Vint Cerf talk about this all the time, this is where really bringing critical thinking to bear, I think, is going to be a determining factor into whether these things are positive augmentations, or whether technology becomes, in fact, something that we find as a burden and something that we just sort of shut out.
First of all, on the good side, these technologies amplify our capabilities. They also expand the scale and reach of what we're able to do in information space. And third, it gives us enormous access to information. And all of those are powerful and positive capabilities that these new technologies give us. On the other side, it also allows for the rapid spread of misinformation and disinformation. It also allows for rapid spread of malware and denial of service attacks and the exercise of harmful behaviors. And in general, a lot of harmful behavior is reinforced and amplified in this online environment, and we have to find ways of defending against that.
There's so much space for entrepreneurial interventions here. This is pretty new, right? I mean, we really only have a decade, 15 years experience with such significant volumes of information coming at us. And it feels like because there's so much information coming at us, the authors of that information have sort of turned up the volume as well. And so we get more screaming, the sort of like virtual screaming at us, right? We get the sentiment feels like it's becoming more and more polarized. I don't actually know if that's true. If we did a sentiment analysis over the entire internet in 2010 and we did it now, would we see a larger polarization? I think there's great research to be done along those lines of, is this something that we feel, or is this something that's really happening? And if it is, can you give me an app that lets me just turn down the volume? I mean, can I as a consumer begin to say, I just don't want to see the edges? right? Just bring me things that are a little bit less polarized. And we have kind of algorithms that can help do sentiment analysis. I feel like there could be ways to bring this to market. So in my mind, overload is kind of natural for humans. It's why the brain is so good at deleting, right? Actually, the thing about the brain is that we delete a huge amount of the information that comes at us. We need to learn to actually apply something similar to the internet until we can evolve to have a brain that can tolerate that much information, or we figure out how to have the external hard drive that does it for us. But I'm actually quite optimistic that this is an opportunity for entrepreneurs to lean in and to bring real solutions to the community.
The first thing that we could do is to improve everybody's critical thinking skills. Generally speaking, a lot of information shows up, provenance of which is unclear. So again, identifying information sources will help a great deal. If you can ask, where did this information come from? Is there any corroborating evidence for assertions that are being made? Can we discern some rationale or motivation for trying to convince us of something in order to get us to do something? All of those are practices which I hope would make a difference.
I think connectivity really matters. And I think COVID has shown us this, that we in a moment where crisis happened and people do become tribal, you have to worry about your family, you have to worry about yourself, you have to figure it out, and nobody's giving you a playbook for what the rules are. And so you see pods being developed for schooling and things like this, and everybody's just reaching to their immediate community and figuring it out. But that automatically kind of leans into driving a larger wedge into inequality. And I think that if we really want to make this a positive, we need to really think about access so that everybody is online. And we need to think about safe physical spaces where children and at-risk folks in difficult situations and communities can physically be, in order to have quiet and safe to learn, to work, to exercise these skills, and to be able to bring those to their communities and bring solutions from people who truly understand those problems. I think that we're focused right now a lot on the connectivity, but I think we're soon going to come to realize that the human aspect of this also requires physical safety and security. You need to be fed, and you need to be physically safe in order to bring your mind to something other than your most basic human needs. And so we need to think, I think, holistically about these challenges. One interesting model we might consider is, as retail is disrupted and we have larger physical spaces that are available that are not being taken up maybe by the same types of retail stores, maybe we as communities buy these spaces back, take these spaces back, and we ensure that the connectivity is sustained and that people can go and work and exercise and eat in these places. Co-ops can bring food in. I feel like there are new and interesting ways that sort of merge the tech and the physical safety and security together. And I'm quite keen to see, again, more entrepreneurial behavior around these opportunities, especially at the state and local level with philanthropies and companies. I think that as we realize that the bottom line might go down a little bit for all of us, but it's going to go down less if we find ways to use the spaces we have and the people that we have. And that may take some investment by all of us, but it's going to be worth it.
One thing that we are sadly lacking, at least here in the United States and perhaps in other parts of the world, is institutional and individual trust. Trust in our institutions and trust in our friends and strangers has eroded dramatically. And rebuilding that is going to be a non-zero effort, because it's easy to essentially lose trust and it's very hard to build it back. Another thing that we could do is to improve people's digital skills and look for ways of bridging the digital divide. The access to powerful digital tools is not uniform, and it's a serious deficit all around the world. It's going to require a significant investment in order to essentially balance the inequities that we see. Well, one thing we can do is to inject transparency and sunlight into the processes that we use for policymaking and for business. Being clear about what people are getting, what people might be getting without being told, I think is a vital part of rebuilding trust, for one thing. Second, I think we can introduce powerful information management tools which are known to exist but may not be available uniformly to everyone, or the skills in their use may not necessarily be available. Strong analytics, for example, or a capacity enhancement to ingest large amounts of information or to filter information to select that which is relevant seems to me an important part of improving the situation.
My hope is that we really, as a nation, embrace all of our resources, that we don't see this as a competition between the federal government and the states. We don't see industry as the enemy. We don't see philanthropy as an afterthought. We don't see our academic institutions as something that only do basic research. That we can begin to think of ourselves as communities again, and that tech is this really interesting augmentation of ways that we can think differently about supply chains, ways that we can think differently about business models, ways that we can rewrite health and education. But we can't do that if we don't also think about the people, and we don't think about safety and security and the human sort of component of this. And for me, I think the coronavirus challenge has really brought this home, that it's all well and good to spend my life focusing on emerging technologies and sitting in rooms and Zoom calls talking about quantum computing and hypersonics. But at the end of the day, I want to be able to go out my door and into my community and see well-educated, healthy, well-served people who are contributing and who feel like they can live a life of their own choosing, not mine. And they can do that well served by the technology that people like me dream up.
I certainly hope we can enhance the positive aspects of the digital online environment and all the digital tools that go with it, and somehow find a way to inhibit the abusive behaviors which we know are harmful both to our society and to our persons, to say nothing of our businesses. Those two things have to be balanced so that we don't end up at some extreme point where we have a society in which everyone is safe but there is no privacy, or the other side of it, there is infinite privacy and no one is safe because no one can anticipate what harmful behaviors are likely to emerge. None of these are going to be easy to achieve, but they certainly deserve our attention.